It's a very good morning to everybody present here. It's a great pleasure welcoming one and all present here for this wonderful morning seminar, which is a very relaxed because being a Saturday morning, I think we all are back more or less to normal life. And Saturday and Sunday is becoming more meaningful now. So my hearty welcome to everyone present for this morning session on holistic education. I congratulate Siki for having organized this on an important period because we are all talking about learning losses and things like that, like how a balanced diet is important for your health, physical health. A balanced education too is very, very important. We have important speakers coming up here to dwell on this important issue. I take pleasure in welcoming Mr. M.V. Subramaniam, Chairman, Siki Technology Committee, Mr. V. Balaji, Senior Vascular Surgeon, Apollo Hospitals, who is also in charge of healthcare in Siki, Mr. Suresh Kalpati, who is Chairman of Veranda Learning and AGS Investments, who is also in charge of entertainment and media in Siki, Mr. George Koshi of Hyundai, who is also in charge of learning and development in Siki, Mr. G.V. Selvam, Vice President VIT, Vellore Institute of Technology, and is also a co-education panel Siki, Mr. K. Sridhar of Talent Spirit, and other people who are there online. They're waiting to listen to the deliberations to take place on this topic of holistic education. And I do hope and I'm sure that with these people speaking and throwing light on the importance of holistic education, particularly on a period like, having just gone through this serious thing about the pandemic, wherein people were all secluded and children, particularly the students, were literally for about over a year have been living within a shell, are having to come out and then experience different things and become like holistic learners. And I welcome everyone and wish this session a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your warm welcome. We had invited the Honorable Mahesh Poyyamuri, Honorable Minister for School Education, Government of Tamil Nadu, to be the chief guest of this session. However, moving to his last-minute travel, he is unable to join us today. He has sent his regrets and we hope to have him in our upcoming sessions. Now we move on to the panel discussion. I would like to introduce the panel members now. Mr. M.V. Subramanian, Chair, Siki Technology Committee, Founder and MD of Future Focus Infotech, who will be moderating today's session. And the other speakers are Dr. V. Balaji, Chair, Siki Healthcare Committee and Senior Vascular Surgeon, Apollo Hospitals. Mr. Suresh Kalpati, Chair, Siki Entertainment and Media Committee, Chair, Veranda Learnings and Chairman, AGS Investments. Mr. George Koshi, Chair, Siki Employability Committee and Head of L&D, Hyundai Motor India Limited. Mr. G.V. Selvam, Co-Chair, Siki Education Committee and Vice President of Vellore Institute of Technologies. And Mr. K. Sridhar, Chief Business Officer, Talent Sprints. Now I request Mr. M.V. Subramanian sir to take forward the session. Before we start the session, I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box. During the Q&A session, speakers will be answering your questions, please. Over to you, Mani sir.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rajlakshmi Madam. Thank you, Bhavani, for giving this introduction and getting introduced to the subject. Let us have some a kind of, what do I say, the framework for us to engage. Probably we will have the engagement where every participant who is in the panel to have their view on the points which they would like to share. The second one is, if there is any question and answer, please type into the in the Q&A boxes so that we will be able to take it and then ask them instead of you directly communicating in this channel. it cannot be much more holistic approach for us to look at this subject, because if you look at the panel members, there are people from education, there are people from industries, and the best is the person from healthcare, and the person who has got much more holistic understanding about education, been with entertainment, again back into education, into the newer ways of engaging with the service. And we have somebody who is into completely what you call upskilling people and purely into technology education. So I don't think we will have better panel to share their views on this holistic education. I always wondered, after this corona come into this world, the first few months was very confusing because it was March and there was holiday season, and everybody expected that things will become better in 2-3 months, and slowly they realized that that is not going to happen. And everybody started moving into how this education can be a continual process through a digital medium. Till then, I was not a person who came into Zoom or WebEx, even for managing the organization. The first few days was very difficult because it has to be made to sit before the Zoom, and we have to make everybody understand how they have to utilize this channel for engagement. And that was my first learnings for a few months to manage an organization. And that has given me a kind of understanding about how an education system, they will now start acting to it. I still remember people were coming and joking where the teachers have not switched on the, what you call, they were in the mute, and the children were not able to communicate because that was blocked. And still the teacher kept communicating for one hour. And then after realizing that no messages actually communicated to the students. And students also found the way how not to engage with the teacher and just have a sideline chats with the mobile phone. Though it is a technology revolution which is becoming a challenge in terms of how do we make the children engage with this, but that is a huge opportunity which is probably will be starting point is this corona has made us start using all this technology. And there is a concept called singularity of anything somewhere start, it has to finally land up with something which is much more larger than what we expect. I have my interesting panel here. I am also going to be one of the listener here because I am not the expert in this education system, and probably we will have the everyone talk about their view during this panel discussion. So I'll start with asking a question for everyone to open. Post-corona, what was your experience to make sure that continuity happens in the education? Maybe I start with Mr. Selvam, but I will have everyone to speak on their experiences, and probably we'll move to the next thought process after everybody completes it. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Selvam.
Thank you, Mr. Subramanian. Last 1.5 years, we faced so many issues, particularly education. As always say, necessity is the mother of invention. Indians, we want that. We didn't expect it will continue for next 1.5 years. So we are ready to live with corona. We have to have an experience to live with corona. We face so many issues, particularly, as I said, online classes. It's new for many students and teachers also. In India, we have this power problem. Electricity issue was the main issue for the rural students. Internet issue. Anyway, we succeeded in that. Even we conducted the exam online also. So we faced so many malpractice issues there. Then we approached US companies to get at the eye operation also. So many issues we faced. We faced online exam. We have industry people. We faced online internship. Then we placed online placements. Finally, we had virtual convocation also. They're all new in our life. So we faced so many issues. We succeeded. Now we are ready to face any issues with this pandemic. All our education system in India, we are ready with the technology to face the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move on to Mr. Sridhar, who is the other end. Like, he uses the medium for providing technology education to the children as well as the upskilling. Probably we would like to hear from Mr. Sridhar what is his view on this.
Great. Thanks for this opportunity, Mr. Mani. It's been a very interesting time. I would say, as an EdTech company, we started investing in technology for education around 10, 12 years back, right? I remember on the 1st of October 2014, when NSDC Chairman Ramadurai launched our first completely online learning program, right? So to some extent, I would say in terms of continuity, we probably were working on the disruption side since 2014. And when the pandemic hit, it became the mainstream, right? Everybody wanted technology for education, right? And this 4 or 5 years of, I would say, head start enabled us to be able to be ready for the requirements in the digital space in terms of delivering high impact, high quality programs. Having said that, the pandemic was not without any disruption for us. I mean, more than 70% of our students and 70% of the faculty were exposed to online, but fully online is very, very different than getting just an exposure to online, right? The second part that we really looked at is, I think Mr. Mani brought it out very clearly, right? I think people had not used Zoom or WebEx before, and that becomes the primary source, makes things that much more difficult and much more challenging in terms of engagement. So our focus has largely been on ensuring that 100% of our faculty and students get benefit. I agree with what Selvam was talking about in terms of there were people who didn't have connectivity. There were some places where we were running programs where there is no support for the individual to be able to go online. But thanks to the social structure that we have, I mean, many colleges in which the students were part of, the colleges supported them. Some of our alumni came forward and supporting students, giving them a tablet to attend the class and things like that, right? And that's a very interesting area. I would say the COVID catalyzed the adoption of online, and thankfully we were lucky to be a little prepared for this and in this process. And the whole package in terms of hands-on experience, peer learning that we had invested in earlier in terms of giving an exposure to the participants helped us. Yes, in spite of that, there were enough challenges we had to go through. And as both students, faculty, and more importantly, the social network system that we have enabled us to overcome the situation. Back to you, Mr. Mani.
Thank you very much, Sridhar. And probably I have to give a little more introduction about this talent sprint where Sridhar being part of. It is a company which has been taken over partly by the National Stock Exchange. This is one of the company which wanted to pioneer in the way the education on the upskilling, mainly on skilling and upskilling in terms of technology. They wanted to attempt newer ways of education. So thanks, Mr. Sridhar. Probably I like to go to the other extreme, Dr. Balaji. I always wondered some of the education for online thing can be probably easy. Like for example, computer science. Teaching online is probably an easiest thing. And if you wanted to get into school education where it is an extreme, the children are very, very naughty, or if you wanted to get into this medical education where the students have to have the feel of probably the patients and whatever they have to do as a practical thing, though they would have been invited during the corona for administering the hospitals and management. We would like to hear from you because Dr. Balaji, you have both this together, and probably we would like to hear from you where your experiences were after the corona started.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for having me in this meeting. First of all, I would like to say probably my answer is going to be from two angles. One, probably as a doctor, and two, on behalf of the medical education during pandemic. As you rightly said, medical education is something which cannot be completely taken over by technology, because we deal with human lives and we have to be in touch with the patients. Of course, because of this situation, especially in the lower classes, like maybe in the first year and second year or so, some of which were converted into online classes, with huge difficulty. Of course, there are some centers around the world who have already been trained to have this kind of technological teachings for all the basic sciences, which of course our country never had. Maybe it's time to rethink, I think, to invest on the technological advances which we should import. In fact, there are some of the private colleges have picked it on very, very quickly during this pandemic. But my opinion is it is never is going to be a replacement for physical teaching as far as the medical education goes. Maybe, it's a stopgap mechanism during this kind of situation, but on the long run, I really don't think that is going to be a replacement. How much did we suffer? As you rightly said, during this pandemic, the health department, be it education or clinical services, the one which was maximally stretched. I know the whole world was sitting in the house and we were the one running around from hospital to hospital, ward to ward, seeing the patient. Right from the medical students to the top consultants, we were all inside the hospital providing service. Whether you are a COVID expert or not, we were all expected to provide service. Be a medical student, be an intern, be a senior doctor. Whatever specialist you are, we were all providing COVID services. Coming back to education during the pandemic, as earlier somebody has alluded to, slowly we picked it on. I know with the technology, availability of technology, the online exams were conducted. As you know, earlier the methodology of examination was completely different. During the pandemic, it was changed. It became more of a multiple choice questions. And of course, we do have what's called a Viva or OSCE systems where the patient have to be there for the exams. And those things, patient have to come virtually. Even that, now we do have system. For example, Royal College of Surgeons, they have an examiner sitting in London. They can oversee exams happening in Hong Kong. They have a system where the technology, like a closed circuit TV, they can set up a system where there is a local examiner sitting with the examinee or a student, and the senior examiner sits in the UK who can oversee the exams. So they have overcome a lot of difficulties. These days, they don't travel around the world, like Royal College examiners don't travel around the world, and they can conduct exams around the world with reasonable amount of security and standardization. So we also had our own share of difficulties during pandemic. However, we sailed through comfortably, both through clinical COVID situation as well as educating our juniors. Of course, there were some postponement of our examination and things like that because of huge surge in the cases. But nevertheless, students have passed out, and it's only time will tell us whether the standard of examination was good enough for them to come out as good doctors.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. And probably I'll move this to Mr. Suresh Kalpathy, because nobody can be better to explain, because he has traveled through this learning system from SSI times to AppTech to now he has become an investor as well as into education as well as the entertainment. I think the whole concept of education has moved, and probably he would have started his next attempt on education through online, but certainly there could have been a much more difficulty post-corona and creating the content and reaching the people and all that. We would like to hear from Mr. Suresh the holistic experience of years which has traveled through these years, and then so that we can have the continued discussion later. Thank you.
Thanks, Mani. So we are into both offline and online education, so I'll come at it from both perspectives. Most of offline businesses getting on to online was a necessity for survival. It was not so much a technological extension that they were doing. Most of the offline businesses went online, whether through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or WebEx, out of necessity. That is sort of how it started. I think once they were forced to do it, people became comfortable using it, people became experts. Even, the old people at home, some of them have now got a PhD in Zoom, who would have never touched even a smartphone before. But out of that, what has happened is, I don't think if the pandemic goes away, the world will revert back to where it was pre-pandemic, because people have tested online with lot of reluctance, I should say initially, but people have now become very comfortable. The fact that we are doing a panel discussion of this nature with so many people completely online, and all of us are very comfortable participating, is a fact that show that this is here to stay. And what has happened in education hence is, today you have many models. So even businesses that were predominantly classically offline, today as they emerge out of the pandemic, have an online offering. They continue to have their offline model of business, which is back to where it was before. And they have experimented with online technology and ways of delivering that. And so they have also different hybrid models, which sits in between an offline and an online. So all of that has evolved because of the pandemic, forcing people to try out many things that they would have otherwise not done. And hence what it means is, as we emerge out of the pandemic, whether in the next 3 months or the next 12 months, we will find that the world goes back to a new normal. It's not going to be the same as what it was before. It's very interesting. Some of our businesses are completely online, especially some of our upskilling businesses are completely online. And those businesses are now understanding the strength of offline, and they are extending into the offline world. As much as the offline businesses were forced to go online because of the pandemic, as they come out of the pandemic, one sees that the offline businesses are doing as well as ever before. And some of the online businesses are looking at offline as an option. So that's a sort of new normal that one is heading into. From a different angle of producing content, whether it is in movies or otherwise, a production always happens at a location, and there are hundreds of people who are involved. And we know that deep into the pandemic, there were movies that were getting produced, which were being predominantly recorded from the respective homes of some of these artists on mobile phones, which were so put together that people actually produce full-length movies with social distancing and sticking to all norms, which were as interesting as movies produced pre-pandemic. Now, we have brought in some of this on board into producing content for education. So today, our content production is set up in such a fashion that if there should be a complete lockdown, our content production will not stop. So we have also been forced to innovate, take some of the learnings from other sectors of businesses, incorporate. And so most of our production of content today is what we call as pandemic proof. So I think as we emerge out of the pandemic, lots of us have learned lots of lessons, depending on which sectors we have come. And I think all of us are, I'm sure, in concurrence that when we hit back post-pandemic, it will be a new normal. It's not going to be life as it was before.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Suresh. And George, this is a question to you. I think there cannot be a better person to relate for the upskilling, because you are part of a manufacturing, and manufacturing cannot happen offline. That is one. People have to come to the industry. The second one is you have necessity to upskill as well as skill. First thing is the skilling them how the online things has to happen, because most of your offices, probably corporate office, may be working from home. Then the upskilling of the learning and development cannot stop, because that is the industry you are in. It changes every day. And probably you personally would have had challenges of how you are going to implement this. possibly you would have had content, in my view, as a content as digitally as possible, but how to deliver it could have been a different challenge for you. We would like to hear from you, your experience to bring it to a holistic way of looking at the impact of Corona, various industries, what they have brought in.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mani, and thanks for the opportunity. Indeed, in fact, interesting to see that we can get PhD online, and also a lot of things that, probably if you look at it, I have it in two perspectives, like, one as a parent and the other one as an educator, and have been with various, probably Hyundai is my 11th organization that I'm working for. So I've been with IT for some time, and with manufacturing. Right now I'm with manufacturing. So probably as a parent, I have two boys, and one of the elder one is in 11th. And probably this is a kind of a thing that I was looking at. There's one thing that I noticed, my experience is that the seriousness has come down in students. That's one thing that I have noticed. Wherein one of the experience, one of my neighbor's kid, he was taking his online assessment exams, and he was asking Alexa for every question and answering the question. So it was, I mean, I don't find anything wrong there, but what I'm saying is, kids always use any opportunity that they get, and probably come out, they were quite innovative and come out with something interesting as well. So for me, when I said seriousness has gone down, because getting back to classrooms might become a challenge for most of the schools and colleges, and also interesting students, in terms of what they should learn and how they learn, also has changed because of the pandemic. So earlier, when we were going to school, it was more of synchronous learning. Teachers come and there's kind of a drive that was done by the teachers. So teachers drive learning. Now you see that it is not teachers anymore. Teachers, they are not in a situation to drive learning. It is more like, the onus of learning lies with the learner and with the students. So that's one of the experience that I've got. With respect to, as an educator, with respect to, going to different corporates, and right now with Hyundai, it's rightly said, Mr. Mani said that, it's a manufacturing company. You cannot manufacture online. Everybody has to be there in the factory. Definitely, it was a big challenge. There's a big difference between while I was with Infosys for 6 years and even before pandemic, due to people being distributed. They are not co-located, they are distributed. And you find that, even then we had sessions done on WebEx and virtual mediums. So we were good at that, even before pandemic, because of the location of the people at different places. And when the pandemic happened, probably in all IT companies, the digital readiness that they are in is really good. Probably all the assets that they have, digital assets they could have, and the infrastructure really helped them in moving forward. But then when it comes to manufacturing or probably some traditional organizations, it became a big challenge, right? The reason being, none of them had a laptop. The infrastructure in the organization was quite limited. All these things was very, very challenging. So, but then we jumped, it was very quick for the organization to quickly procure all these gadgets and things like that, and provide it to the employees. And quickly we actually transitioned. But the learning curve was quite steep, and probably it was quite difficult. So, I mean, totally agree with that. So that's been my experience with respect to digital readiness, seriousness coming down, getting back to classrooms could be a challenge. Thank you, Mr. Mani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. George. But I have noted few points which you mentioned, which probably I will try and get the views from others during the discussion, because many of us have left their views. See, the learning is left with the children. Even before in the classroom, the learning is left with the children, in my view, because even the teacher teaches. I do not know whether they can observe, but at least now there is a difference here is the teacher also have to learn how to engage with the students, not by just before coming to the camera and then talk about it. They have to find a way to make sure that the student engages by giving appropriate content in the medium so that the learning of the children also become better. That is one. Probably I will ask few people to have their views. The second is the examination. In my view, doctor touched upon it, and you also probably looked at the way the examination to be done is not that physical to digital. It cannot be physical to digital as it is. Instead of writing, you don't put it in a computer. It is not going to be the way the assessment should be done, in my view. The assessment should be real time when they are doing their examination. We have during the learning itself, we have to find out whether they have learned appropriately, and then make sure that the process of assessment become a continuity for them, not just one time assessing. This is my view, which probably I understood from the new age edtech companies which are there. So I leave the thought, but the next round probably I would like to hear from the panelists on the impact which has been created. The impact which has been created, which is permanent in terms of either it can be a negative impact, because the objective of us to find out if there is any negative impact, can we discuss and bring out the positive outcome, because we found out there is a negative impact. The second one is the lasting permanent positive impact, which probably the panel can throw upon some light on that. Probably I will allow Mr. Dr. Balaji, because he comes from the healthcare as well as in education. We would like to hear from him what is the impact which has been created because of this new age learning, or this corona has brought in for people to sit at home and the learning comes to them through different mediums.
I think it's a very excellent question. So when people talk about impact of technology in education, they're all looking at only the positive aspect. Now, as a doctor, we looked at lots and lots of downside of this technology in education, which has happened during a pandemic. Not to, pull the technological developments, what has happened, but what we saw was the mental health issues in all the stakeholders. I mean, see, as far as the education is concerned, we are looking at different people. We are looking at children or students starting from kindergarten to colleges. We are looking at parents. We are looking at teachers. We are looking at educators, that is administrators, and of course the government body which oversees everything. So we are different stakeholders who go through the same amount of stress. Of course, the aim or the bottom line is we want to give the best education within the available limits. And as you know, see, our country, everything is not uniform, both economically, socially, as well as geographically. We have students from rural areas, we have students from urban areas, we have students from semi-urban areas. As somebody pointed out earlier on, we have huge digital divide, right from having the internet connectivity to electricity to available of technology and instruments. How are we going to provide equal amount of education to everybody? And that's where the mental stress came in. Everybody wants to give the best education to their children. Imagine, because of pandemic, for 19 months, more than 1 billion kids were staying at home. And you can imagine one generation of children who missed out the whole of kindergarten. That is 2 years they are at home. When they come out, they have never seen a kindergarten teacher in reality. Of course, they would have seen online, but there's nothing like interacting with their own teachers. So they would have gone straight on to the first year. As you know, we believe in the formative years. If you don't teach them properly during the formative years, they are not going to make a good, this is what the science says so far. Maybe it'll be different, when they come out in the next 12 years or so. That science so far says that your first few formative years are very, very important. That is why, as you know, the new education policy also stresses on that, So there is nothing like a virtual class for a kindergarten kid. We depend on not only imparting the education through the teacher to student, but also they need social contact, both with the teacher as well as with the peers. They all learn from the peers also. As you know, when they come to school, they play with them, they learn from other peers also. That is also very, very important. And that is what's going to reflect on the mental health or mental health issues when they come to the school. Again, from the parent side, we saw yet another huge issue of mental health issues. We saw a huge number of parents having a mental breakdown because they have to do their own online work from home. They have to provide some kind of support to the children because they should be with the children. They have to provide technological support. For example, if somebody's got only one computer, how does a family, father may be working from home and they have to provide some kind of instrument to the children. They are under pressure. In addition, all the education will not be provided by the school to the children, and the parents have to sit with them to do some kind of additional education to the children. Monetary issues. So that's why, in addition to children, even parents came under a lot of stress. In addition to this, one important thing what people forget is lots and lots of families had losing their family members in their own family. That we don't realize. We took at the statistics, and each school would have lost at least about 10 to 15 parents, especially depends on where you live. So it again affects the children also, both financially as well as educationally. So we have seen wide variety of issues, technological issues as well as mental health issues. And I think mental health issues will be a major problem when the children come back to school, so that they have to adapt to this so-called from online to offline, the physical classes very, very gradually. And I think it's up to the educational institutions to make it very, very comfortable for these children who have now been to the school for the last 19-20 months to adapt themselves, and then they pick up their learning methodologies very, very quickly. I know as an educator, from class 8 to class 10, people have forgotten how to read and write. Now we are going back to basics. The class 10 students is at the level of class 6. We have to teach them very, very basic things now. So these are the issues everybody's going to face. I mean, teachers are under stress. They have to catch up the last 2 years in the next few months. They are also under stress. So these are the issues we face as a doctor, as an educator also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. You have given a very large impact, which is socially, which is going to have on the children and the parent. And you also spoken about slow learning of the children because of this. They cannot write and they cannot read and whatever, which is possibly they were doing in the classrooms. But I also have a view that the writing skills have actually started slowing down a little long back because of usage of phones and computers. But anyway, for the downtrodden, we are in the tribes and the lower edge of the population, have this impact all the time. Now, even the economic impact which has been created for the parents is also going to be a permanent impact which has been created. Now, I cannot ask a better person. I have to ask the better person, Mr. Suresh Kalpati, because he has been through this and probably he wanted to provide solution globally for many things. Possibly he would have thought through these answers. Possibly he would have observed how this has to be looked at. We would like to hear from Suresh on this.
Mani, thanks for the trust that I will have solutions for all of this globally, but I'm only going to come up with a couple of more issues that this has created. I will try my hand in giving some practical solutions that I think could possibly work. So first is, I think, like what Dr. Balaji said, just to put it very succinctly, and this is something that I tell many people, that if all of us thought that kids go to school to learn physics, chemistry, and math, we can't be far away from the truth than that. Kids go to school to learn life. And that's something that's been a big challenge to do online. For all of us, our best friends are from school. The first fights are in school. The first crush was in school. And that's where we sort of become socially acceptable human being. And that, I think, has been one of the biggest things that the kids have lost. And some of them, I think, will hopefully, with some rehabilitation, get back into being socially acceptable and socially acceptable behaviors. The second one that I wanted to point out is online has also created a new set of challenges, right? So if it is kids going to school, we know that some of the kids get bullied, some of them could be harassed, and we have solutions in place to take care of all of them. And, compared to where it was 20 years ago, we have sort of perfected it with laws, regulations, and with different oversight panels and supervision. But if you look at online, what is online accepted behavior? What is online etiquette? What are the types of harassment that can happen when people get exposed to online, whether it is kids, even adults, could be any gender. And we have seen many of these issues. So that's another challenge people are groping with it. There are some draft etiquette norms that private companies have put out, for people, for meetings that happen within those organizations, institutions. But, is there a global standard that's acceptable? Is there some laws, regulations that govern? It is all in the making. Lots of them are being fast forwarded because of the way the pandemic has, gotten through everyone's life, but it's still something that's, in the making. And it is a challenge even today in many of these online interactions. Even for people who are, so as you go from a preschool to a schooling to college to post-college work environments, my belief is the component of online that you can have ideally is minimal as you are in pre-KG, preschool, and could go very high as you move into colleges and offices and upskilling and career development. And that's a trajectory, I think, that will probably come to settle. The pandemic has helped to hasten a lot of these processes, accelerate a lot of these processes. But even if you look at people who are online career upskilling, if you look at people who are enrolling into online certifications and online degree programs, the level of completion that you find is extremely low compared to what it is for people who are joining physical colleges and learning. Compared to joining online into many of these degree programs, the level of completion, the percentage of completion is very, very low. The fourth point is, as people work in a context of a physical classroom, I think Dr. Balaji touched upon it very briefly. We learn from our cohorts. I remember days in my school, I learned most of it from the student who was sitting next to me than even from the teacher who was trying to teach me anything. That is also something that the online world is trying to grope with in terms of different technologies that have come. You can have private chat rooms within a larger chat room and stuff like that. But most of that is still being used to a lot more frivolous purposes than for serious sidebar conversations. In a physical world, it comes very natural because of our physical proximity. But in an online world, those classrooms itself, private sidebar conversations itself have to be virtual. There are different tools that have come, but it is not in any way able to compensate the level of interaction a physical facilitated cohort would have. So, technology is trying to come up with solutions, but, 1.5 years is too short because only now we are understanding the full scope of the set of issues that we got to tackle with. Some of them have come with solutions, quite a bit are still continuing to be challenges.
Thank you, Suresh. Now I move on this question to Selvam. Selvam, I think you are pioneer in actually making the education different in the universities and colleges after they finish the schooling. And possibly you would have had a kind of lesser acceptance impact with the students. Possibly the students would have been more adaptable to the changes which you brought in. What is the impact left on the teachers and your university, and what are those impact, and how that is going to be a lasted one, or how did you look at that impact, and can you share that experiences with the audience?
I strongly argue no technology or online education can replace physical classes, our former speakers mentioned. But in our institution, 5 years back, we started this digital thing. So we started digital assignments itself. So our faculty can correct their papers on digital itself. So they can scan and upload. So faculty can correct from their home itself. So it's uploaded. Students can see the marks from the home itself. So we are used to the technology. So our faculty didn't face any issues there. But from the student side, particularly PG students are going to get degree without seeing the campus. So mostly next year they'll be getting their degree. Now it's on internship and all. They're very much worried. So UG students for the last 2 years, they didn't see the campus itself. But exams, we started online only during the pandemic. So we had so many issues in the exams. But initially 1 or 2 exams we faced issues. Then we had some help from the external agencies. Then we succeeded on that. But in US, if you compare with US universities, there's no difference between physical classes and online classes. Even in India, we say it's correspondence or online degree or something. In US, the phase is also same. Physical classes fees is also same. Online degree or correspondence degree fees is also same. But India, there's no acceptance. Still, we believe only on physical classes and physical exam. Yes, it's our Indian system. So definitely our mindset won't change. But as per UGC also nowadays, they recommend blended technology. They say 70% and 30%. They want to continue online education system as 20% and 30%. That is due to shortage of good faculties, particularly in the rural areas. So now UGC suggests to have online classes and online system for 30%, where we can get credit from them, then it should be accepted. But nowadays, institutions started using this blended with this technology. I hope it will continue as a blended technology. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you are very sharp on what is your experience of this impact. Probably I'll move on this question to George before I go to Sridhar. George, very interestingly, maybe it's my assumption or observation, the content related to the education available for a company, which you could have used with the defined set of users. It is unlike there is no large sets of people, but there is a defined set of users who have little experience. You wanted to do a learning and upskilling, but the content available may be with the different formats. You may have a real-time content for welding. You may have a real-time content for doing some manufacturing activity. Probably you would have speeded up and used it much more, because in physical world, you can go to take them to a shop floor and then ask them to learn on their own. And probably you would have now mixed up to enhance their capability to observe the learning through a different content, which you could have created much faster to make sure that these people learn. We would like to hear what was the impact as soon as you realize that Corona is going to stand for a longer time. You would have done certain things for you to make sure that this learning and development is not slowed down and it is much more faster than earlier. We would like to know the impact of those space. And what is left, even if it is a negative thing, which like Dr. shared, what has been left as the negative impact? We would like to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. In fact, it's one of the most grappling questions that are probably solutions that we could find out, because softer skills can be delivered, probably even someone talked about it, that computer skills can be even delivered online. But there are hard skills which cannot be delivered, like what you said, you talk about welding or anything related to mechatronics or things like that. It's very, very difficult to deliver online. So that, Mr. G.V. Selvam talked about the 70-30. In fact, it is 70-20-10. We always only 10% we learn from classrooms, 20% we learn out of conversations that we have, and that's what Suresh Kalpati was talking about, wherein 20% we need to have those side conversations and things like that. We learn from our cohorts. It's very, very true. And 70% we learn on the job. So that's how we all learn, because we learn by doing things. And so that has become a kind of a challenge, after pandemic, or probably during the pandemic. And if you ask me, do we have solutions, clear solutions for that? The answer is no, we don't have. If you ask me, did all the apprentices and the technicians that we had, how did we train us? We actually slowed down training for most of them. We did show some of the videos and things like that, but then how effective it was, I really don't know. I could not measure that as well. So that's the truth. So one more thing that impacted, that this is something which is, apart, probably I'm just sidetracking. I'm sure that you all noticed that, one of the impact that automobile industry had was the shortage of semiconductors. The reason was the entire semiconductors was moved or tried to buying gadgets like your laptops and mobile phones for education, and because people look how it disrupted the entire industry. Wherein the semiconductors moving to another place, and probably people started buying all these mobiles and laptops, and that's one of the biggest impact that we noted. And so because of that, there was a slowdown as well. Pretty interesting to see that the one thing that I noticed probably we should do is create more digital assets for training in classrooms. Probably you should not think that it should be done online or virtually, but to generate interest in students, because students have, as I said earlier, that seriousness has come down. We have to actually come up with new ways to teach them. Teaching methodologies have to change. And so we have to create digital assets so that we can do that, use those in the classroom so that you can generate interest for students. That's one thought that I have. How economically viable these are, because when you talk about digital readiness, we can talk about organizations. Probably organizations may have money, but if you look at the entire country, how digitally ready we are in terms of buying these gadgets and things like that, I really don't know. We have to really come up a long way. One more thing that I personally feel that there should be a free hand given to schools and colleges. There shouldn't be much of a kind of a interference by the government. That's something which this is my thought. Probably correct me if I'm wrong. These things could actually change, is what I feel.
Thank you, George. I think from industries it starts the learning. So I think what you're going to drive is going to have a lasting impact in terms of even the schools, and because you leave the information how this can be handled over a period of time. I go to Mr. Sridhar. I think Sridhar, Talent Sprint, I know that you have been preparing last 5-6 years on online programs, and possibly this corona would have, I know that you also had the largest capacity for teaching offline, and you had education, offline education in the campuses as well. So I just wanted to know what was the impact, because that is something which would have, the good programs has to be created. That is what your intention was. And what was the impact on all these things, what you have seen?
Thanks, Mr. Mani. Yeah, absolutely. I think all the things that every panelist talked about is completely what's happening. And from the students' point of view, there are a lot of challenges, parents, social, etc. Since that's covered extensively, I would like to focus on two other stakeholders, right, whom we have to probably explore. And that's an area where I would like to share my impact on. One is the management. When I say management, including Talent Sprint as an education institution, various colleges we work with, various top institutions we partner with, how do they think when this happened, right? And the second is the teachers and the faculty, right? The impact on these two have been extensive, right? One common notion is that online means high volume, low efforts. That's not fact at all. And this pandemic has taught both the management and the teachers, saying that for making things effective online, you need to provide far, far more support than what you would have done in the physical classroom. And if you look at the underlying discussions that we had, saying that how the 10, 20, 30 or 70, 30 discussions we had, it's because of the fact that most people, the management, thought that the tool like a Zoom or a WebEx is a solution for a classroom. While that could be a great solution for a classroom, classroom is not the place where everything is learned. People learn by doing a lot of stuff on their own. People do by working with others. People learn by doing work with others. People learn in the corridors, as has been brought out. So when we really looked at it from tool to platform and platform to digital campus is the journey that the management who are really thinking of making a similar impact had to shift. And this shift has been a major change, and a lot of institutions and companies are in its way accepting this reality and moving towards that. Faculty required a huge amount of support, right? I mean, in fact, the first 3 months, I remember we ran classes constantly for these professors in various colleges, our own faculty members, our partners' faculty members on how to go online. And to make for high impact, to make things easier, we also created a process of an assistant, not a teaching assistant, a platform assistant, along with every classroom in every faculty, right? Wherein, I mean, faculty is an expert in the subject and he or she need not be an expert in the platform, right? So I think the change in mindset to make things work online, the online pedagogy and the assessment being different, to be internalized and to be looked at. See, I completely understand how there is a need for physical classes. We need to do that. But the question is, what is the right percentage? I mean, I don't think it will ever be 100%. Again, is it 10% or is it 30%? And it has to evolve, and we don't have an answer for it. But the two key stakeholders, the business managers and the management and the faculty, had a huge learning, and that impact, I believe, is going to be lasting for long. I'm sure at this point of time, I see a lot of institutions investing in a digital campus which can replicate the physical campus to as close as it can be, right? Well, there are some things the digital can do better, and a lot of things the physical can do better, but trying to bridge the gap. The work is going on, the journey is long, and I think the learning is there for us to move towards it. Over to you, Mr. Mani.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar. I think next round also probably I'll come at the last, because I reserve your final comment because we are from the technology space now. So I move on to next topic, which is how the future looks like. What are you gearing up for the future? Because something which Corona has started with some of the initiation of the digital world, like I do not want to quote it for the wrong reasons, but like demonetization, which has actually speeded up the digital economy. Like Corona has actually speeded up the digital education system much faster, but many of us were not prepared, particularly school education, were not prepared for these kind of an impact. But post last 2 years, we have learned, and we would have probably solved some of the issues. Yes, we recognize that everybody as a human being, we have to be meeting, as well as we should have an kind of other activity. It cannot be completely parallel into a digital world. as I was observing, I'd been to a global event of TIE in Dubai. So it was scheduled for 500, 600 people to attend, but finally 100 people attended. And all the 100 are the people who wanted to actually break away from home and then be there, and who have been retiring in their professional also. So, but there were not many young generations who wanted to participate it. And some of them have asked question, is it going to be online too? In the sense, though it is physical, will there be an online sessions? Because they feel that this learning of somebody giving a gyan in the platform can be heard through even digital once you have either real time or the recorded one. So things are shifting, but the networking can happen only in the physical world. That's what been assumed. And that is something which made sure that there are not enough participants there, though the young generation still believe networking is going to happen in the other world, not in the physical world. They have much more better networking in the digital world. Giving this as an impact which I have seen physically me and every one of you have observed, and what you wanted to move on to the future, what do you think your future looks like, what is the preparation you would like to do and for the future, because this is going to leave a permanent impact on the people and the institutions, so that they are gearing up for making use of it as in better way for the engagement with the students or the learning mechanism. I just go on to the first to George Koshi for his comments on what future looks like and what are you gearing up for future, so that it is having a permanent changes which has been incorporated.
Thanks, Mani. In fact, doctor was talking about that medical teaching is more in terms they deal with human lives, and Mr. Suresh Kalpati took it one step ahead and said education by itself, not just medical learning, education by itself deals with human lives. That's very true, because what are we going to do? Because students, if they don't go to classes and if they don't sit with their cohorts, I think, and probably those learning, that the communication or conversational learning does not happen. So I think technology is here to stay, definitely, and that's the future. We're talking about metaverse, wherein people have different avatars, and people are going to come into your classrooms, into your homes, and probably have conversations with you in metaverse. We're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, where everything is done through technology. So all these things are going to happen, and that's the future. But then, however, I think it is important that we cannot forget the traditional classroom, the chalk and talk, and those traditional methodologies that we teach and learn. I think that's very, very important. What we should look at as in schools, colleges, and in organizations is to actually blend all these things, have a good blended approach, a hybrid approach, wherein all these things are done. If there are certain things that we can learn better in a kind of a virtual mode, like, for instance, if it is more conceptual in nature, probably you can do it in a virtual mode. But then if there are things that you have to learn more hard skills and things like that, like the medical skills, I think it is more important to be there and learn by doing things. I think the challenge is to create those structure in learning, be it even for leadership, for that matter. Like, how much can we learn leadership skills in an online mode? We have to be put in those situations, and probably how they react and take decisions or make decisions. That's what matters for a leader. Like, how many decisions have we taken in the right way, and how do we do that, and how do we check that, how do we assess that? In fact, what amused me was one thing that Suresh was talking about. PhD can probably, you will never be surprised that PhDs could be taken online. But what is wrong in that sometimes? I feel that way, that if in online, if assessments are done really well, if the PhDs can create, probably solve solutions, real-time solutions in the real world, it doesn't matter whether he is I mean, probably accredited with a PhD online or offline. Does not matter. What matters is the thesis. Is the research that he's done? Is it going to be used in real time? Can it be applied anywhere else? That's what matters. If that is done, and probably if that could be achieved, I think does not matter whether it is online or offline. So that's my final take on this.
Thank you, George. Now I move on to Mr. Suresh Kalpathy. I think he has again, as I mentioned, both on creating content and what is going to be a large preparation you are making for the future, because it's speeded up many things. So probably you would have thought through what is going to be the future. Maybe you can talk from the area of your interest in investment also for the future in this EdTech space.
Thanks, Mani. I think the first one slightly on a tangent, but as we move forward, I just want to sort of give a glimpse on what one can expect to see and what changes you will not see. This type of a pandemic, as all of us know, comes once in 100 years, right? I mean, we have seen the last one somewhere in the early 20th century, and now, we are seeing another one. So hopefully that history is anything that we learn by. The next one is coming 100 years from now, right? So, and as people, we keep forgetting, though people say the best is what you learn from history, we don't. We generally keep forgetting. A couple of generations later, this will be behind and part of their history books, like how we read about the bubonic plague. So, but some of the things that will go back are things which we do because of necessity, which have no value add to us at all. For instance, we wear masks, we use sanitizers, we socially distance. We are doing that out of necessity. Moment the restrictions get lifted, all places people gather in huge numbers, whether it's a restaurant, whether it is in theaters, whether it is in conventions, people get together big. And so things like wearing masks, social distancing, sanitizers, expect them to slowly fade away as we move away from the pandemic. But online education, which has become big, because a lot of it was forced by the pandemic, but people realize significant benefits, people realize a lot of value that it does give, whether in a play form or in hybrid form. Those are economic values, those are significant values adds that have been created. So those are not going back. As we go over the next 100 years into another pandemic, these are learned incorporated into our daily life, and those will just stay on. What are we looking at going into the future? I think, George briefly mentioned about Meta and the metaverse that is coming. I think that throws up some extremely exciting possibilities. Because if there is an answer to a cohort in the digital world, it will come through something like a metaverse. Because then you can have your cohort, you can sit with your friends virtually, you can have sidebar conversations that is a lot more physical. Now, will there also be certain holographic imagery that can come? There were products starting from a Cisco telepresence that came out, which gives you somebody sitting just next to you digitally, but you can actually see them. So I think those are some of the very, very exciting things that are coming to answer some of the challenges that we today face. Maybe in the next 10 years, some of those would get answered, and they will be there when the next pandemic comes in. So there are changes that are coming in the future. There are things that we will throw away as the memory of this pandemic fades away.
Thank you, Suresh. We look for in the next panel your views on this same subject. I think you have to leave for some other meeting. Thank you so much for being with us and then contributing your thoughts.
Thanks. And thanks to all the panelists.
Thank you. Next question, probably this question is the same, and I would request Dr. Balaji to share his view on what is that you're looking at the future, some of the learnings which has been done, because even healthcare, I think it moves much faster than any other system in terms of education and in terms of engaging with the healthcare practices. So possibly you have learned this both the ways. You would have learned something which can be adapted in other things. And even I know a company which is in one of the incubating. There you have this, instead of having a physical body, they have created a kind of a digital body for the examinations or maybe for the learning to be done. I have not seen it, but still I know that these are some of the things which will be incorporated in much faster in healthcare. And you can leave your thought on from your education, engaging with the education institution background, how you would like to make shifts to the education system permanently, so that people can note it down and then find out is there anything which they can adapt.
Okay, thank you. I mean, there are certain scientific aspects I think we have to keep it in mind. Corona is there now. I think it is not going to go away very soon, as we all think. Maybe last pandemic, Spanish flu, disappeared, over 2 years because the mortality rate was very, very high. Millions of people died. But this time people are not going to die, but the virus is going to come around, as Bill Gates said, in some form or other. However, it may stay as like any other influenza virus, and people have to be prepared in some form of isolation and other non-pharmacological way of prevention, because it is going to mutate and mutate and mutate and come in different avatars, until we find a real solution in the form of vaccination, which, as we do now for influenza, we keep changing the vaccine every year. I mean, unless everybody gets a jab every year, which is going to be extremely difficult. I mean, imagine vaccinating the whole world population every year, which is not going to be feasible. So we are looking at this, some form of infection or respiratory infection coming back to us again and again. So I think we should have a vision and plan for the future. As I said, as the virus is going to here to stay, even the technology is also here to stay. We should keep updating our technology as and when it's available, so that it's useful to students across the board, either from the lower classes or upper classes or wherever they live. It's up to the students and faculties to train themselves and keep it ready. As you rightly said, the health education or the medical education part of it, for example, anatomy, where we used to do a cadaveric dissection, say for about 4 to 5, a group of 4 to 5 students will sit around a cadaver and then start dissecting. Now they have what's called a hologram, which is actually a virtual body which is fitted in, and just by gesticulation you can do either longitudinal section or cross section. You can open up, go to different levels and see what's happening inside. So it saves two things. One, there is a dearth of actually, availability of cadaveric bodies. So it is not possible for 5 students have it anymore. In some places they have 20 students crowding around the body. Now you save that. Secondly, because of the technological advances, you can make it virtual also. Instead of students going into the cadaveric lab and being there, you can do it virtual also. So in future it might change. I think we should all be planning ourselves that the technology keeps improving, your education methodology keeps improving, and we all have to equip ourselves, both the students as well as the faculties and the educationalists. But however, there will be some part of it has to be physical. Maybe as somebody said, it may be 20% or 30%, and that has to be there. So to conclude, I would say we should embrace the development of technology in all form of education, be it medical or non-medical, and it is going to develop. It will be more advantageous for both students as well as faculties also, I think, in future, because these things are going to keep happening again and again, because you can't switch over as and when it happens. It's better we go that way all the way, and you be prepared for this situation. That is what I would recommend as a doctor as well as academician.
Yeah, it's a perfect statement for Mr. G.V. Selvam to continue the answer, because this is anyway permanent shift has happened and the future looks like this. And this corona is going to stay in different forms, not different, and again, different impact levels. Again, we cannot be excluded that people have spoken about the emotional quotient of the student, and learning capability comes from peers. And then these has left some thoughts too. And you would have thought through every one of this for you to really make your future ready classes, which VIT possibly would have come out with this plans. And if there is something which you can share it for the audience, that will be very, very helpful for us to understand, Selvam.
Thank you. As a nutshell, the future, we have to follow our Indian culture, what our ancestors said. Eat organic food, fresh food, no what I call junk foods, be hygienic. Definitely we have to follow that. We have learned this lesson for the last 1.5 years. You need not to go to hospital if you maintain all three. As I said, this technology definitely is going to continue. We have to live with corona. Already we have a system called flipped classroom, where all lectures are captured. The classrooms, we have cameras in the classroom itself. It's automatically captured and it's posted in the social media. Students have to listen to the lecture there and come only for discussion. It's not like a teaching, a flipped classroom concept. Many business schools have started this concept. It's going to be definitely future. So digital assignments, flipped classrooms, online exams, then there'll be only discussion in the classrooms. Group discussion will be there, doubt clarification will be there. Now we have digital library. They can access the library from the home itself. No need to come to the physical library. Main thing is it's going to be avoid groups. As doctor said, we have to avoid groups. So mostly they stay in the campus. Awareness should be spread among the students. Still, they are not serious. Last May it was very serious. Again, now it has relaxed down. Again, next corona is coming in slowly in the way. As in January, it will spread. Yesterday also, central government has announced we should be wearing mask again. So our students should be serious. The main problem of India is population. That's the main headache. I hope everyone will agree for this. But slowly, I think government is taking action on that also to handle this issue. So the future, as per new education policy, they say it's going to be blended technology. Maybe with this online education system, our literacy rate will increase, definitely will increase. In India, Kerala, I think Kerala is topping in literacy rate. Soon, other states like Tamil Nadu, South is always leading in literacy. With this new education policy, as an exit class, we have certificate, diploma, degree, honors. Credit transfer is a great advantage for the students who studies in Chennai can go and study in Jammu and Kashmir. It's like a bank credit. It's going to be a great advantage with this online system also. I hope we are ready to face all the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Selvam. I think I leave the final question to Sridhar, because I have few more things which has been left here, because there are many things being left, but few more things technically which is left, like even Selvam was talking about credits, instruction design, then leave it with what Dr. and Mr. George started with, like VR technologies and all this technology which is coming in. So these are some of the things which is left with the technology groups to find the way to make sure that the learning becomes much more experienced, as well as it reaches the last mile. So I think you possibly would have thought through in these spaces through your intervention as well as your delivery. So I would like Mr. Sridhar to throw some light on this for the future.
Great. I think technology is here to stay is something that everybody has alluded to, and that's truth. We are going to be here. And as American researcher Roy Amara said, we overestimate the impact of technology in the short run and underestimate it over a long run, right? In the short run, there have been so much challenges that we have looked at when the technology got implemented extensively in education. And the fact that what would have taken an institution 10, 15 years to decide on to going online has been taken overnight thanks to a situation, right? And what actually happened over the last 15 years is something which will throw light on what's going to happen in the future. Historically, for centuries, the education was same place, same time, right? All students are with the faculty at the same place at the same time. And the MOOCs came in trying to disrupt it, saying that you are at different place at different time. Okay. I think what's going to happen going forward is same time, different place. That's one area which is going to be a very, very important part. And not just that, it's a combination of all these three, which is going to be equally important. I think, in my view, technology and research will provide answers if we have, as education institutions, have the right questions. And the question, in my view, to start with is, what is the right mix of these variables in the matrix of the 2x2, right? Time and location, same time, different time, same location, different location, to make the pedagogy effective. I think it's a framework question that all over the world education researchers are now looking at, and all of us as practitioners are also trying to balance it based on what's currently possible. I think the future will be where we have tools available to solve various problems that we are currently facing from technology side, and the business and research takes the right mix for various areas of knowledge building, what the framework will look like. I think that's where we are going. The virtual reality, the augmented reality, the metaverse, all that are going to be a component of the solution, which is brought inside this framework.
Thank you, Sridhar. I think it was a very comprehensive, but it takes time for every one of us to understand how this is going to be used. And this particular webinar is not for that, and probably we'll have a deeper discussions later. Now we will go back to the questions which has been asked, and possibly if one of you can, looks like most of it is a general question. And if there is any answers, possibly you can see the questions and answer it if possible. Otherwise, I will just make my answers.
I can take one of the questions. I think I can take the questions, like, probably so most of the questions are based on affordability, but then it's very difficult to respond to that because it's about mobilizing funds. If you ask me, I think, instead of governments interfering into the operational aspects of colleges and students and colleges and schools, I think they should mobilize funds for more advancing technologies in government schools. I don't know how, is it a big ask? I really don't know. It could be. I think that's one aspect of it. But then the second thing is, how much can we keep asking government, and possibly that's another thought that I keep having, because teachers make a lot of difference. Right, in every schools and colleges that you have seen, there is always one teacher, one professor who's like so much passionate in teaching, and that person might bring in a lot of new ways of learning. He or she might actually learn new things, adopt great things, in teaching. And so I think teachers make a difference there. And probably if there are more teachers and professors like that in schools and colleges, probably like some of the questions that they've asked in terms of how do we adopt some of these trends in schools. Because for me, if you look at it, there are so much in open sources, like, in fact, just now Sridhar was talking about MOOC, which is massive open online courses. There are so so much that is available. But I still understand, probably people in rural, students in rural places may not have gadgets to even access those. It may not have internet connectivity to access those. So those are some of the things that the government should quickly take action and probably mobilize funds to work on those. That's my response. And one more question is about gamification. In fact, that's an amazing place to be because we always love to be competent. When you see a leadership book, kind of a board, we always get excited. And I'm sure that, that's one definite way of learning, no doubts about it. Yeah. That's it from my end.
Yeah, maybe I'll also take this question on no gadgets to children. And I remember when I was doing school, no TV at home was a requirement for somebody to do 10th standard and +2. And today we have learned to live with multiple TVs in every homes and still not compromise on education. And that's where no gadgets to children will also move, right? The question 25, 30, maybe 40 years back was no TV to children, and today it's no gadgets to children. I think it's enabling education, and I'm sure that's a necessity. I think it's the question of how do we socially enable the students to use it for the right purpose. That's a very difficult challenge. Having said that, we have learned as a society how to use the TV, and similarly, the students will learn how to use the gadgets.
So yeah, I possibly, if there is no more answers, possibly I will try and then comprehend all the questions and give some views on what possibly larger institutions and the SICKI like organization can attempt it. Is like, I think we all know about how the fintech have developed. The fintech growth was not because of government's intervention. The fintech growth was somebody like one organization which created that UPI and the whole stack. The whole stack was developed by an independent organization which gave free to the government. That whole framework was given freely to the government and allowed the private players to engage with that framework and provide solutions to each individual in the way they wanted to provide solutions to consumers, provide solutions to the banks, provide solutions to the SMEs. So it depends on how the last mile solution providers utilizes that. You look at the UPI, Aadhaar card, UPI, everything is being actually stacked one after another. I think next stack is going to be on health tech. I think parallelly, larger institutions and the government, as well as the organization like us, can bring out its education stack for Tamil Nadu, and that becomes a role model for the whole country to adapt it. And possibly one of the question is the cost. The overall cost will come down as soon as we start building a kind of a model framework so that everybody can use that framework to make sure that it has been delivered last mile. In my view, if digital is adapted, the cost of education will start coming down very, very drastically, and it should bring equality to everyone whoever there in a rural or even in the remote places can adapt it. Only one thing is that as government is focusing on the roads and the other infrastructure, they will also focus on the digital infrastructure to be reached to the last mile. It is not too far, but it is not too close to. It will take another 10 years. We have actually begun the journey, but organization like us has to bring out this concept of building an edtech stack for all the people to use it. So that will bring a very different experience to the citizens of people who wanted to use education and then grow from there. I leave the thought, and if there is anything more to add by Mr. Selvam or Dr. Balaji, I just wanted them to add it. And we are on time at 12.
Yeah, to add on to your point, as per this new education policy, they say facilities can be shared by the institution. It will come down. It will cut the cost also. Particularly in the rural area, many institutions cannot have the facilities like many systems or the labs. They say it can be shared. So definitely it will cut down the cost as per the new education policy.
Sir, just last two questions I can see that. How can the government encourage technology adoption in schools and colleges? And what can schools in the rural parts of the state to do implement these trends? I think these two questions go along. I think government, in future has to look at it this way also. For example, now they issue bunches and bunches of books. Maybe in future, they'll all be uploaded onto a tablet and given to them just as a tablet so that, it's easy for them to use it. It prevents them carrying huge weight. In fact, that is supposed to be even medically hazardous. Children have developed spinal problems because of carrying books and notebooks. And obviously in rural areas, as I said, providing the digital connectivity, that may be a challenge on the short term. Even the long term, I think, with the availability of mobile technology, I think it'll be easier for the children to pick up this digital way of studying even the standard books at home itself. That is what we feel in future.
Thank you, Doctor. And we have dot on time at 12. I am not going to wrap up this by again speaking about whatever you have spoken about. I leave everybody's thought, whatever been shared from your point of view, and I'm not going to consolidate that thought. Thank you very much for being in this panel, and thank every one of you who have been listening to this. And I know that many of you can contribute to this discussion much. Please write it to Bhavani. We can continue this discussion little more deeper once there is an understanding between the cohort of people who wanted to contribute to this. Thank you. I leave it to Bhavani to conclude. Thank you, Bhavani.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, panelists, for accepting to be a part of this discussion. Your insights and suggestions enlightened the audience. Thank you, participants, for joining in this session. To know more about our activities, requesting you all to visit our website, CICI.in. I had posted my email ID in the chat box. Please write to us if you have any more questions or any suggestions so that our speakers might clarify in our next discussion. Thank you once again, and wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.